Good morning. Let's talk a little bit about Gabon and what is happening in Africa. So, while we had on the 26th of July a coup d'etat occur in Niger, which we've spoken about, and I will talk a little more about an update on that today. We had on the 30th of August, so just 2 days ago, we had a coup occur in Gabon. Now here, the military has ousted President Ali Bongo Ondimba after his election for a third term. The military made a decision that the elections were not legal, not valid, and they have assumed control. They have replaced Ali Bongo with General Brice Oligui Nguema. He was once actually the bodyguard of Bongo's late father, the previous ruler of Gabon. Now, Ali Bongo and his father have held the presidential office of Gabon since 1967. His father was president from 1967 until 2009, and then upon his death, Ali Bongo assumed the role of president. The Gabon, previous French colony, previously occupied by the French, like Niger. It also received its independence or obtained its independence in 1960, like Niger, and then in 1967, Ali Bongo became the leader. Now, there have been a number of corruption inquiries into the Ondimba Bongo family. A French financial corruption investigation by financial police alleged that the Bongo family own 39 properties in France. This Gabon is one of these nations which is rich in resources. It is a large producer of oil, rich in oil. However, it has a very poor population, something ridiculous, like getting up to 40% unemployment in some areas. So this now is like the last in a string of coups. In the past 3 years, these are in Africa's former French colonies. There have been coups in Mali. Oh, I'll just get the map up here. We can have a bit of a look. Where are we? There we go. In Mali. So this area here. There's been a coup in Mali. There's been a coup in Guinea. Burkina Faso, there's been a coup. Chad, Niger, and Tunisia, and now Gabon. I think what we can see has been happening in Gabon is that the excess and corruption of the French when they were the colonial leaders has been passed on to the ruling elite in Gabon, and now the military, perhaps taking heart from what has happened in Niger recently and in these other previous French colonies, the military has decided now that they, being closer to the real populace and the people of Gabon, are going to assume control and remove the democratically Western-aligned leader from the presidency. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has condemned the coup, as would be expected from the United Nations. He has expressed concerns over reports of serious infringements of fundamental freedoms during the election. So while he is acknowledging that there were apparently some problems with the election, which Bongo claimed to win with 64% of the vote, and I'm not on the ground. I can't be certain if the election was rigged in any way or not. One thing that's been interesting in the reporting thus far is that there has been apparently quite widespread support for the military leader, and there hasn't been rioting from Bongo's supporters trying to reinstate him. One might think that if 64% or more of the population were in favour of him and had voted for him, that they may have come out and forced to support him. That hasn't seemed to have happened. So read into that what you will. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres expressed concern over reports of serious infringements of fundamental freedoms during the election, but urged all parties to respect the rule of law and human rights. US State Department spokesman Matthew Miller said the United States is strongly opposed to military seizures or unconstitutional transfers of power and urged the coup leaders to preserve civilian rule. He added, the United States stands with the people of Gabon. I wonder if the people of Gabon have heard the United States standing with Ukraine and how that makes them feel. The US Embassy in Gabon advised its citizens in the country to shelter in place and limit unnecessary movements around town. Americans in Gabon should keep a low profile, avoid demonstrations, and make contingency plans to leave, and have evacuation plans that do not rely on US government assistance. Again, this is telling. If the American presence in Gabon was strongly supported by the people of Gabon, if it was seen to be helpful in fostering and growing the nation, one would wonder why the Americans would be being told to keep a low profile and avoid demonstrations and make contingency plans to leave that do not rely on us helping you. I don't know. European leaders have made similar statements. The United Kingdom condemned the coup and urged the government to be restored. And while, European Union, the EU's top diplomat warned that a coup would increase instability in the whole region, Spain said it will evaluate its military missions in Africa. So, more talk of military response to the coup from Europe to a coup which is in Africa. Now, Joseph Borrell, this is to do, just going back to the Niger, the coup there, but on that, just an update. So, ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, and just on this map that I have here, I just wanted to show this so that you can just see who's who here when we talk about ECOWAS. So each of the nations here with one of the red dots on them, Cabo Verde, Senegal, the Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, Guinea, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Togo, Benin, Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger are the 15 current members of ECOWAS. The Niger, of course, here, but these with a blue tag next to them: Mali, Burkina Faso, Guinea, and I've included Algeria as well. Algeria is not in ECOWAS, but those with blue are ones that have come out and said they will support Niger if military intervention occurs there. And Algeria, I think, is perhaps on that side. They are certainly looking for ways to resolve the conflict in Niger without military intervention. Now, President Macron did come out 2 days ago and said that they will support ECOWAS if ECOWAS do undertake military intervention to reinstate the Western-friendly President Bazoum in Niger. But anyhow, just Joseph Borrell, ECOWAS and the West African Monetary and Economic Union have introduced financial sanctions on the coup leaders. Once that coup was established in July 26, suspending financial transactions with the nation and freezing national assets. So this is the West African Monetary and Economic Union and ECOWAS. Also, the members of the Presidential Guard that were responsible for the coup have also received travel bans. On Wednesday, Joseph Borrell of the United of the EU, said that he had proposed a new legislative framework to ministers that would allow the EU to impose its own sanctions on the military leaders. When asked whether the EU would consider financing a standby military intervention by ECOWAS, Borrell did not disregard the possibility. "We're ready to consider any proposition," he said. So what we are seeing here is, I think, a revolution. While in the past we've talked about Arab Springs and things like that, where the West has moved in and has enforced and supported coups and the overthrow of governments. Here, what we appear to be seeing is the citizens of their own nations overthrowing Western-friendly governments in nations that have suffered under French colonialism in the past. So these coups here are of a different type to the springs that we saw through the Middle East and the Maidan Spring in Ukraine. Here we're seeing real coups with people from their own nation assuming control of their nation to oust what they see as Western influence. And from the reporting I've given here, we have the EU and the UN and the Americans and the French and the Spanish making decisions as to whether they will support military intervention in these nations. Now, you may notice that those nations aren't in Africa, but they have great interests in these African nations because of the resource-rich nature of Niger and Mali and all of these nations here. And because of the existing very favourable contracts that many of these European and Western countries hold over these African nations, which is why, in many cases, these resource-rich nations are so poor and have such high levels of unemployment, because their resources are extracted at tiny rates to European nations, with no fair recompense given to the countries or the people of the country whose resources these are, apart from a thin, milky layer on top of the ruling elite in these nations. And as we see, while I don't know the Bongos personally, that seems to be the impression given of them by those who have chosen to usurp them from their position and to throw them out of leadership in Gabon. Anyhow, as I've say, this area is going to heat up. This is going to become a second front of the Ukraine conflict. And that's due to the fact that what we're seeing in Africa is another change in the existing global order. We are seeing France, who relies on uranium from Niger, losing that uranium. In my reporting yesterday, I discussed how France's three top suppliers of uranium, which provide about 70% of the uranium that France needs. Remember that France is the nation on the planet which derives most of its energy from nuclear power generation. It generates about 70% of its power. 7 out of every 10 homes in France get their electricity from nuclear power generation. Now, the three largest providers of uranium to France, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and Niger. Niger has suspended its supply of uranium to France, and Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan are both the transport of uranium from those nations is under control of the Russian Federation. So France is in a position where this conflict with Russia, if it grows really hairy, then perhaps, if NATO were to get involved, then Russia might just say, you're not having any uranium out of these countries. It's stopping. And so they will then lose nearly 50% of their uranium in one go. And with Niger not providing the other 20%, France suddenly has a real energy problem, So we've got these Western nations who have these centuries-old relationships where they have arranged through their colonial ownership of these nations for a period of time these amazing deals and access to the resources of Africa. These African nations revolting against this, then becoming and seeing Russia as a far more trustworthy trading partner, more so than China, more so than all other nations combined. The African nations see Russia as being a favourable trading partner. So what we're seeing here in Africa is this shift, these nations overthrowing the Western aligned rulers and then looking to deal more with Russia. As I said, we have Wagner already in Mali, Wagner forces there, Yevgeny Prigozhin just prior to his death or possible death was in Africa drumming up business. Now we know that there's still strong connections between the Wagner PMC and the Russian Ministry of Defense. So they have an established forward presence here already. If Niger continue to throttle and to stop the export of uranium and gold to France and the US, then we will see ECOWAS or someone commence military intervention in Niger. That will then draw in Mali, Burkina Faso, Guinea and Algeria, and ultimately, I imagine, Russian forces to protect those nations. And as I say, we'll have a second front of this conflict in Africa. All right. That's enough from me for today. I hope you're enjoying these reports. If you haven't subscribed already, please do subscribe. Please tell your friends if you think they enjoy the channel. I'm trying to grow the channel, and I would really appreciate your support there. Have a good day. I look forward to talking to you again soon.